Hey, everybody, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Today's guest is Kelly Schuknecht, right? And I know I screwed that up, but Kelly is a marketing pro. We get into the idea of thought leadership and how that can help you grow your business and with acquisition, but also with attraction of your customers. And we get into like how you can do that. We get into some of the tactical components. We talk about her experience. We talk a little bit about cigars. So go grab a cocktail, grab a cigar, strap in for another impactful episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. Kelly, welcome to the program. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to jump on and have a conversation.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're going to talk about marketing. We're going to talk about thought leadership. But before we get into that, I always like to understand: is there a book or that you reread, or one that you gift a lot to business colleagues?
So I am a big reader, and I read about 50 to 60 books a year on average.
Wow.
I am not a rereader. I never go back and reread anything, even my favorites. Um, and I don't gift a lot of books, but one book I talk about a lot that I would recommend to anyone who looks for like professional development type books is Getting Things Done. That is one that I recommend all the time. If I could buy it for everyone who works for me, that maybe that'll be my future gift that I'll give them. But Getting Things Done by David Allen was really life changing for me back when I read it in about 2018.
Okay, I'm curious. You don't go back and reread books.
I don't.
Um, is that because your comprehension is like I'm one of those guys that has to reread and kind of go back and put notes, and I've got stickers and stuff in it. Um, that just you just read it, retain it, and move on.
I guess. So I read both fiction and nonfiction. And so the fiction books I read, sometimes I look back and I don't even remember if I've read them. Like all of it just goes out of my mind. I actually do book reviews and I try to track everything I read so I can go back and if I don't remember the book very well, I at least have my notes on it. Usually if I write a review, I can remember the book better. Uh, but yeah, nonfiction books. I love anything personal development, professional development, those types of books. And I don't know. I take notes. I keep quotes from them, but I feel like there's too many books to read to go back and reread them. Once I've read it, I'm good and I want to move on.
You keep the book, or you get rid of it.
So it depends. My new rule. So I this during the month of January, I did a minimalist challenge where I went through my house and got rid of stuff. And so books were one of the things that I have a lot of. And so I started looking through books, and anything I gave 3 stars or less, I got rid of. So if it was a 4 or 5 star, I kept a copy of it. I read a lot on Kindle also, so then those are just digital copies.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's one thing that I've not heard from any guests before is that you always go do a review, and that's a really generous thing to go. Even if it's not a great review, it's still a generous thing to put a review up for somebody's or an author, because it's a challenge to write. I mean, books are an ordeal to get created, and
Yeah.
it's sort of gratitude by doing that review. That's pretty cool. Um, so let's talk a little bit about, before we get into the thought leadership piece. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got to be doing what you're doing today. Two
Yeah.
2 Mile High Marketing.
2 Mile High marketing. Yeah. And I'll explain the 2 Mile High marketing is because I live in Colorado and most people know of Denver as the Mile High city. I live in an area called, I'm near Leadville. I'm not in Leadville, but Leadville, Colorado is 2 miles high. It's 10,200 feet. So that is where the inspiration for the company name came from, and how I got there. So I am not the kind of person, I'm not a risk taker. I'm not the kind of person that would normally start a business. However, my progression has been I started in publishing, and actually, that's part of why I review the books that I read because I have a lot of author connections. And I just kind of always did that as a hobby outside of work. So I worked in publishing for 10 years. I ran a publishing company that was family owned. When I left there, I moved on to a marketing job and was in that role for 7 years. And my company was acquired. So the company I was working for was acquired 3 years ago now. And so for the last couple of years, I knew that my job was probably coming to an end. And, it wasn't a huge shock to me when I was laid off in 2024, but I I mean, it's always a shock, I think, when you lose your job, but like I kind of expected it. So it wasn't horribly surprising. And luckily for me, for about 2 years, I had been thinking about what was going to be next because I kind of knew it was coming. So I had spent a lot of time. I had actually read a book called What If There's More by Tracy Barrett 2 years ago. And it was when I read that book that I thought she kind of talks people through, if you're not happy in your job, kind of what the next step might be for you, whether it's leaving the company, starting your own thing. So I had been thinking about it since I read that book, and I started thinking about my company. I'd actually created the name of the company, the website, the basic idea of what I was going to be doing. But it wasn't until I was laid off in October last year that I kind of had to really make a decision. Not kind of, I really had to make a decision at that point, right?
Sure.
Am I going to lean into this thing I've been dreaming about for 2 years, or am I going to get another job? And, of course, I was kind of on the fence for a little while, but it took me just a few days, and I decided that the company was on my mind, and it was the dream that was there, and this was the opportunity to start it. And so that's the direction I went. And that's when I really had to decide what were those services I was going to offer. Originally, I was thinking it was fractional CMO services. Uh, but the more I talked to people at those kind of those early days, and I kind
Mhm.
of wanted to get my head around taking my experience, taking the things that I was good at, what I enjoyed, and packaging those into something, I decided to go in the direction of thought leadership marketing and marketing strategy for small companies. And so, yeah, so all of that is very new and also grew I think tremendously fast because I had put so much time and thought into it before I got to that point. And I had already established a really great professional network. And so people knew I was, starting this new thing, and they were reaching out to me. And so I was really fortunate that I was able to do that really quickly.
So you literally hit the ground running. Is
Yeah.
is so the entrepreneurial um, bug kind of started to percolate, right, when that company was purchased. So you could see the writing on the wall, and it's always jarring when you lose the
Yeah,
gig. But you already had the plan in place. You just had to acknowledge that that was going to be your path going forward. So it just
absolutely.
was naturally could go quickly. Where somebody like me started my agency 10 years ago, out of the idea that I left a really good job to go work for a startup that never really started. So there was nothing to do at that point. So I figured out I was either going to have to go back and work for some kind of asshole, or I could go be, do my own thing. So I had to start, walking slowly, right, to figure out what it is that I wanted to do. And
Yeah.
but the freedom to really, you said that, finding something you're good at and something that you enjoy, when you can combine those two things, right, you're following something, your passion, you're following that thing that really that drives you, um, and it makes the whole effort easier.
Yeah.
um, Getting acquisition of clients, and dealing with clients, and dealing with everything that goes involved with that, it you know if you really enjoy what you're doing and what you believe in, it makes the whole entrepreneurial effort exciting.
Yeah.
So I want to get into this idea of thought leadership as a way to um, make people aware and to actually not acquire, but attract um, people. But there's in terms of marketing strategy, I often see, especially in smaller companies, um, marketing is an afterthought. But that's what we hire salespeople for. What do they need marketing? And I don't think people really truly understand all the facets of marketing, um, and the importance of that congruence to what you have in your marketing, whether it be your website or some collateral or just what you say to your prospects. So I mean, is that something you've noticed over the years that smaller companies don't put that emphasis early into marketing?
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually, so a few of the companies that have come to me recently, in addition to the thought leadership kind of service line that I've created, we also do marketing strategy for companies. And so I've had some come to me who have grown without really any marketing. And I'm kind of shocked by that as a marketer because I'm like, how in the world did you get to $5 million without doing anything in marketing, right? And the great thing is that companies of that size who are now going, now we need marketing to get us to the next phase, to the next goal that we have. What's great is they're in a great position because now you start putting the things in place, like having an email newsletter and going out and doing speaking events and those marketing, having a lead magnet, those marketing tactics will really help propel them now because they have grown despite their lack of marketing. um, but yeah, it is quite common and shocking to me because right now as I'm starting this agency, I'm thinking of like what are all the marketing things that we could be doing right now to grow, and I don't know how people do it without that.
But it's usually something that somebody needs some help with too, right? You need some guidance from a professional, no matter where you are in your journey. Um, you need a marketing professional to kind of uh, give you priority
Mhm.
and quality. Because it's really sad to watch somebody that's really really good. I have a friend who's really good at what she does, and her marketing. I'm just going to say marketing stuff is awful.
Oh.
It doesn't represent her. It doesn't represent what she's capable of,
Yeah.
and she's tried to do too much um, with her marketing instead of just really focusing. And I mean, we've all done to that to some degree, but rather than just throw stuff out there, it
Yeah.
seems like we could be a little bit more thoughtful about our marketing effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put some
Yeah, another thing I've noticed is the people who have come to me, every one of them has said, I hired this company or I hired this agency, whatever, who came in and, they came in and did some sort of marketing plan or some sort of marketing kind of overview, like this high level overview of what was needed, but they weren't able to deliver of tactical plan. And
right.
that's where I come in, where I am so tactical. Like I look at it's like, what are the goals that we want to hit and how are we going to get there? And then let's do those things. Let's create those things. Let's create that structure, that plan. What are we going to do consistently to bring in those leads? I've actually been quite shocked how many times I've heard that come up where I kind of wonder what other marketing agencies think they're delivering because delivering uh, delivering these overall strategies without the tactical piece is really missing the mark for many companies.
Well, you what I've seen a lot of it. I have a lot of friends that are marketing in one capacity or the other, and it's interesting that this big, grandiose, beautiful strategy or plan is in place, and then it's like, okay, how do we execute on that? And
Right.
the owner is left holding the bag
Right.
um, without without that effort. And it's okay. I got all pretty stuff here. This looks cute.
Yeah.
Um, it,
Now
it
what?
it 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 sounds good, but how do I go? tell people about what I do. And frankly, it's something that I was just talking to a friend of mine this morning about that attraction component of marketing. And that's something that you need to be disciplined with, you need to be consistent with, you need to be on brand and be really focused about it. But I think that attraction piece, it ties to exactly to what we wanted to talk about in terms of thought leadership,
Mm-hmm.
because you're putting your ideas out there. So, like, how do you define thought leadership? Can we start
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. So I think of thought leadership as so you have typically the CEO, the business owner, the founder, the entrepreneur, that head person who they know their company, they know their client, they know their message for the most part. I mean, sometimes they need a little bit a little bit of coaching to get their messaging down, but like they know what they're trying to help people with, right? And so it's then taking that knowledge and turning it into different types of content. So all of that content is intended to be educational. So whether it's, going out and speaking, we do LinkedIn posting for entrepreneurs. So that LinkedIn posting or that social media, reaching your audience through that type of content, doing podcast interviews, doing webinars, you're sharing your knowledge with the world with, of course there's an intention of you want to bring in leads through that type of thought leadership content, but you're not leading with I'm trying to get sales out of this. You're leading with how can I help people with this information, and they're getting to know you through that type of content, and it will naturally turn into, and I think this is where people struggle with like trusting the process, but it naturally turns into people coming to you as the expert in your field, coming to you for whatever that service is that you're providing because they see you as that expert. And it's a positioning tactic, but not, I just want to like make that really clear that your intention shouldn't be like, I'm going to go and do this to get leads or to get sales, but you're doing it to position yourself, and that over time will lead to those sales or those consultation calls, or bringing those people to you because you're going out and sharing your knowledge with the world. So I think anyone who's running a business knows what those messages are that they can be sharing with the world. And then it's just taking the time to create that content and putting it out there.
And that is the rub. So I think there's a really valid, a really, really important point there to, you call it thought leadership or sort of educational content. We're, we're trying to help people. We're trying to help them understand something that they don't understand about a particular topic. And
No.
we're giving them value, and without the pitch, right?
Right.
Without that, you can have a call to action, but it doesn't necessarily mean buy this thing. The call to action would be go think about what this means to your business, or go think about doing this one step in the right direction. And it does take time. The content needs to be valuable,
Mm-hmm.
it
Yep.
needs to be attractive. But how do you help somebody understand? Let's say that they have their message pretty close, just needs to be cleaned up a little bit, let's just say, but they don't know where their targets hang out, they don't know where they live, right? Like, how do you help them figure that component out? Where do they spend their time putting the content?
Yeah. Most of the company or the thought leaders that I work with are they know pretty well where to find their audience. Typically, it's B2B professional services. They know that their audience is going to be on LinkedIn. They're going to be going to events. So some of it is finding those right events to get them to, right, and finding where that audience is. So we do a lot of research around that to help find those events that are the most beneficial to them, not just for this going and speaking, but also for the networking piece that happens when you're going to those events. So often I've gone to events and I've seen speakers like just come for their session and then they leave, but you miss out on really valuable connections that can be made at those events as well. But yeah, so just, we do a lot of research to help find those events that are specific to the audience that they want to speak to. We also can do a little bit of that discovery through podcasts. So we can get them on podcasts where they're, chatting with people and over time helping them refine their messaging through those podcast interviews. Because the more you're talking about those things, the better you get at, making sure that you're getting your points across in those 25 to 30 minutes that you have in that podcast window. So I think the more of those it's like you're going to the gym every day, right? It's your reps that you're putting in to really get your messaging down.
It becomes, that's where the discipline piece comes in, where
Mm-hmm.
you need to be consistent. You need to hit the same topics. It might be one topic, it might be two or three topics, but you need to be really clear about what those, and give them something that's really going to add value. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing more guesting on podcasts, and um, very particular about where I go. Right, I want what I'm going to say to have value to that person's,
Right.
that podcast audience. And if I it doesn't, like, I don't need to be on a knitting or a quilting
Right.
podcast,
Right.
right?
Right.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
add any value there. But I mean, it's not always that obvious, um, and it takes a little bit of work to get there. So they could hire somebody like yourself to help um, manage that and develop the right content, because the ones that are really worth being on, as you know, they're a little discerning. They want to make sure that you're going
Yes.
to bring it to help their audience, because their audience is expecting. Um, some of them play games with fees and stuff like that. Um, but I was just on one recently where he does his whole year in January. He records all of his podcasts in
Wow.
January, and he's got 100,000 plus listeners. He's got lots of little tools that he uses to grow the audience, and it's really cool to watch. That's another way of getting on a stage, right? When you're working with somebody, that podcasting, be guesting is a small stage. It could be a
Mm-hmm.
big stage, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what I've seen is I think it's worth exploring everything at first. So if you're new to podcasting, being open to getting on some of those smaller, brand new podcasts at first, and not
Hmm.
being too picky about whose podcast you'll go on, right? But
But it's
just
it's the
getting,
content, right? It's not the who so much as the audience, and my message going to resonate with these people,
yeah,
right? That's
yeah.
what's important.
Yeah. And I think, then after you've done a good 10, 20 interviews, you start to know, like, okay, I know which podcasts are going to be a better fit for me or which audiences I want to get in front of. And you start to refine that over time. But at first, I would say if you're new to it, just, be open to whatever comes your way and then start getting more particular as you go on. But you're right. There are those podcasters out there who are going to, uh, they're going to ask for more information up front. They're going to do a pre-interview with you, which you do, right? So there's a process because you have built your audience and you want to make sure you're delivering value to your audience, and you don't want to just have anyone on, but you want to have people who are going to be the most beneficial for your audience. So you kind of learn these things as you go, but I think at first be open, and then you can get more particular as you go on.
So in terms of being a thought leader,
Mm-hmm.
putting stuff out onto, let's just say, LinkedIn, right? You're a B2B company. Your offering is B2B. It's a complex sale, and being there consistently. So your advice you're giving to clients about how often they should be doing posting, or how often they should do a LinkedIn live. Is there a frequency aspect to this, or does that vary too much?
We try to balance consistency with also just the reality of having a busy schedule, right? So we recommend 2 to 3 times a week on LinkedIn. Uh, when you get to the point where you're posting daily on LinkedIn, people start to wonder, like, does that person actually have anything to do? right? When you show up a little too consistently, it might, you want to kind of balance that. Like, I'm a busy person, but you're constantly reminding them that you're there by posting on LinkedIn 2, 3 times a week, right? Um, when it comes to like podcast interviews, sometimes, we have busy schedules, right? So it's hard to just be doing that all the time, right? But we also do about 2 to 3 times a week, or excuse me, 2 to 3 times a month, or maybe once a week kind of cadence is what we try to schedule for people. So it's not too much of a lift, but it's just enough where there's a constant presence on podcasts that then can be used. We can turn those into clips that we can use on LinkedIn, and take that content and repurpose it in other ways. So we try to make it where I actually have a client where I got him on 2 podcasts next week, and I told him, like, sorry, I know that's it gets to be a lot, right? You don't want 2, 3 podcasts in a week. You want to spread it out over time for the sanity of the CEO or the entrepreneur, but also just, for their consistency of their appearances.
Yep.
So that's what we recommend.
I have I've been getting on podcasts where the host is in Australia or Great Britain, and the time zone thing is sometimes you're supposed to be up and have a lot of energy and be excited, at 7:30 at night after you've had a
Yeah.
day, which that requires some extra caffeine on at least on my part. Um, So, I think this idea of thought leadership as a way, as a means, and having a good strategy, but working on the tactics. You've offered up quite a few ideas here. If somebody wants to learn more about what you can do and want to dig in a little bit further, where should we send them?
Yeah. So, best way to connect with me would be on LinkedIn. So, I'm sure you can put this in the show notes because my last name is not the easiest to spell, but Kelly Schuknecht on
It's also,
LinkedIn.
it's also not the easiest to pronounce either.
Right, right. Yeah. So I'm sure you can have that in the notes. But then
It will be
also, my website is 2milehighmarketing.com. So for anyone who is, considering getting help in the areas of thought leadership marketing or marketing strategy for their company, that's where you can find me. And the other thing I think I had given you the link to that you can include in the show notes is my podcast. So I do a podcast with female authors of nonfiction books who
Mhm.
have a message to share with the world, and I like to feature them. So I have my own podcast to kind of elevate those women.
Awesome, and that's fun. That's work, but you're helping the community um, get some notoriety and some affection. That's awesome. Um, okay, so I have all that in the show notes. People will be able to just click on your LinkedIn or click on your website. So I would encourage people to go. One of the things that you have on there, you'll have a conversation with somebody. You'll do a consult with them to try to kind of figure out if you're a fit for them and give them some ideas. Right, that's
Yeah.
part of your program. Yeah,
Yeah. We do
awesome,
a 1 hour free consultation just to see how we can help.
awesome. Um, so last question, Kelly. Any past or present, any relationship with cigars?
So I have dabbled in that. I'm waiting for your facial reaction to this, but to the Swisher Sweets, have
I'm, I'm,
tried
I'm
those.
I'm going to be purposely try to keep my face
I,
quiet.
I was waiting for the reaction, but no. So yeah, I did you know explore those during my younger days when we'd be out by the campfire, and but my best memory is so I would travel to Vegas a few times a year in my previous job when I was working for somebody else, and my boss was a really great guy, and so he a lot of times he'd be on those trips, and I remember going to the cigar lounge at Caesar's Palace,
Sure.
and yeah, and I just remember sitting there. We ate some charcuterie, and sitting in that kind of cigar smoky room, and my husband would buy some of those to bring home because I have a neighbor across the street who's a big cigar smoker. He does cigar Sundays. So that's
Hmm.
his routine. And so we would bring him home some of the cigars that we would find there.
So you were comfortable. You're not a cigar smoker, but you were comfortable sitting in that room and enjoying that vibe with the all of
Yeah,
the
it
cigar
doesn't bother
smokers.
me. I just personally, I can't, I don't know, I'm just not a cigar smoker.
Yeah, there's
But I
nothing.
don't mind,
It's not for everybody.
yeah, but I don't, yeah, it was this the lounge that they have at Caesar's Palace is it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean it's a large lounge. I mean, there's lounges everywhere in Vegas. I mean, my favorite is the Davidoff one on the Strip,
Okay.
um, and because it's indoor and outdoor, so you can sit out there and just people watch. That's the fun thing.
Okay.
But it's a to me, it's fun to watch somebody who's not a cigar smoker be in a lounge and realize, oh, this isn't so bad. These people aren't
Yeah.
really looking down on us, right? To me, the cigar smoking, that lounge, that environment is very welcoming. It's fun. It's very casual. Um, and I was just in Vegas for a conference, and going to the room, like you got chairs sitting around you, and you're there by yourself, and people come up, hey, you mind if I sit? And then you end up having a conversation. Some of
Yeah.
the nicest people I've met have been in cigar lounges. Some of them in Vegas. So,
The only
um,
downside for me is that I do have a lot of hair, and so when I go
uh-huh.
into those cigar lounges, I know it's got to be a hair washing night.
Yes. Well, I remember I used to go earlier in my marriage. I belonged to a Kiwanis club, and we would have our meetings, and then we would hang out. And there was a table of guys playing poker, and there'd be a table over here, people playing bridge, and then there'd be a table over here of us smoking cigars. And I would have to, before I crossed the transom into the bedroom, all the clothes had to be thrown into the laundry room, and I had to go take a shower before I could get into
Yeah,
bed
yeah.
because it is pungent. It is a thing. Um, and I think it's important to be respectful. But I don't have the hair issue, but I could only imagine that that's going to
Yeah.
hang with you for a little bit. Awesome,
Yep, it does.
awesome. All right, Kelly, I appreciate you taking the time. I think we've added some value to the audience, and I hope this helps you and some of our listeners. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to and watch this podcast. It's really important to me that we're adding value to our audience, the entrepreneurs, the founders, the people out there taking the risk. And I don't know that you guys realize how important it is to do what you're doing. Being an entrepreneur, I mean, you're creating opportunities for everybody in your organization. You're creating opportunities for your customers. You're creating opportunities in the community. And I think that every once in a while, when things, being an entrepreneur is tough, right? We know this, but I think it's every once in a while we need to take a moment in those tough moments and think about how cool it is that we get to do this and how much we actually are providing value to so many people. So you need to appreciate what you do, not just for your people, but for yourself. You're doing some great work, right? You might have a bad day from time to time, but you're doing great work. Keep after it, have some fun, and just enjoy this process. I thank you again for listening to this podcast. We've been doing this for a while. Our audience is growing. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss an episode, or at least have an opportunity to track it. Tell your friends. We're trying to have fun. If you got ideas, please share. If you have an idea for a guest or if you have an idea for a topic, please share. Thanks again, guys. Bye.